Question on Twitter, Samini Musire says Clinton will carry the day. Most of you actually saying that. On 22422 we have somebody who says, hi Hussein, the difference between Clinton and Trump is clear as day and night. Americans will reject division and cynicism by electing Hillary and making history. And then somebody says, I support Hillary because the way Trump handled women in the past, I think he will do it even more if he gets to that office. But there's this person, and I'll engage the political analyst later, who says, Trump all the way. I think he will change the world. I don't know what you think, because he or she says Hillary will lead the world in diplomacy. Dr. Richard Busiri will be telling us about that. He's our political analyst tonight. And Javas Bigambo, both our political analysts for tonight. Thank you so much for making time for us. But I want first to cross over to the U.S. ambassadorial residence where Anke Guter is standing by. U.S. ambassador is supposed to host, or is set to host, a post-election program to monitor the results for the U.S. elections later tonight. And what do we expect?
Yeah, Hussein, and that certainly is a hot ticket in politics, at least this year. And as far as diplomacy is concerned, we're expecting guests here from about 5 a.m. Kenya time. About 1,500 guests from, drawn across the Kenyan divide are going to be congregating here to watch those election results live. And perhaps we can show you pictures of what the little dome behind me looks like that will accommodate these guests, including members of the political class from both sides. We'll have election experts, election institutes, democratic institutes represented here. We're expecting religious leaders, educationalists, civil society, and basically a cross-section of the who's who in Kenyan society to watch a poll that certainly has been divisive in terms of rhetoric. The U.S. Embassy certainly is looking out to show the transparency of the American democratic process, and perhaps a process that we as Kenyans can learn from somewhat as we prepare to go to the polls next year. But certainly whatever happens at around 6 to 7 a.m. Kenyan time, when we can expect some decisive results from that election, no matter what that result will be, it certainly will be historic. This race has been historic. It's the first time a woman in U.S. politics has risen, so far in the political class, and that is coming, basically just 10% short of clinching this presidency, if a Reuters poll is anything to go by, that earlier today placed her at 90% certainty to be the next U.S. president. And of course, if that happens, she'll be returning to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, which is a location she's very familiar with, where in the 90s she and her family resided as the first family in the United States. I think what would be of interest to our viewers, however, this evening is what a Democratic or a Republican presidency would mean for Kenya and would mean for Africa. Of course, Donald Trump has been on the record taking issue with migrants. This is certainly a big deal in Africa, where we're seeing a lot of young people pressed by hard economic times, by tumultuous situations in their countries, are looking to go across borders to search, for greener pastures. And will the United States remain a quote-unquote safe harbor as it has been over the years? Possibly not with a Trump presidency. He has taken issue with a number of migrants there, talking about time to empower the middle class again in America, who have not seen the kind of growth perhaps that a very excited young Obama administration had promised. What is interesting, though, to note is that historically Republican governments actually have been the ones that have committed the most aid to Africa, and without preconditions when it comes to governance issues, as much as the Democratic side of the divide has. And so perhaps while more people, the establishment, quote-unquote, may be comfortable with a Hillary Clinton presidency, it may not necessarily mean that it will be easier on Africa. But I guess we'll leave that to your experts in studio to tell us more about that. But we'll be camped here starting from 6 a.m. where we'll be bringing you the results. Of course, here they will be streaming various independent U.S. media to get election results from that. And again, if Obama's election was anything to go by, who knows, perhaps by dawn, 7:15, we should know who the next most powerful leader in the world will be. I'm Anke Guter, live from the U.S. Ambassador's residence. We'll see you at the crack of dawn. But for now, back to you, Hussein, in studio.
Thanks, Anne. Of course, join her tomorrow morning. As she says, she asks, who do you think will win? Again, somebody here on 22422, you never thought about this, says Donald Trump. Just so you know, later on we'll also be talking about corruption in Kenya. But first, the U.S. election. Dr. Richard Busiri, I want to start with you. Does this election really matter to Kenya, and why?
Thank you, Senator. I think the election matters to Kenya. The main reason is that Kenya and the United States have had a long-standing relationship, and there are interests involved. And the two candidates have kind of declared their positions in terms of their relationship with Africa.
Right.
And it's to my best of my knowledge, a continuity of a democratic regime might mean better things for Kenya. Continuity.
Why would you say that? Yeah.
At least for continuity. We have various programs with the United States to do with security, fight against terrorism, and I would think that Clinton will continue with the policies that Obama has put in place, particularly on those issues and other emerging issues within the region. So I think Kenya would be better off with a Clinton presidency than Trump presidency.
Well, first, the risk of seeming inclined to one side, I want to say that maybe may the best woman win. Now, moving forward, I think everything to do with the U.S. elections has always mattered to Kenya.
Yes.
And when we look back with the benefit of retrospect, whether it's from the days of the Cold War, the Kennedy period, and all the way, Kenya has had a very fruitful relation with the United States of America. And every election in the U.S., such as this, it heightens the margins of democratic practice that Kenyans can learn from. And the partnership too, and the solidarity is something that has taken Kenya to a better place, whether it's a question of seeing how Kenya combats locally and even regionally matters of counterterrorism, etc., and also the bilateral relations and the good governance initiatives, which helps Kenya to scale up its accountability mechanisms, etc.
Right. So, like he says, do you think we're also better off with a Clinton presidency than a Trump presidency?
I think looking at how...
Does it really make a difference for Kenya,
it sure
for
does.
Africa? Yeah.
It sure does. Looking at how Trump has conducted his campaign, and with all the claims of sexism, misogyny, etc., and the disrespect for women, especially, then the immigration issue that he has not been so careful about, then one wants to put into perspective the foreign policy issues that a Trump presidency would portend for Kenya and for Africa.
But both have, I mean, many have said from both and how they were campaigning, there was very little about, not Kenya, but Africa generally. Very little from both sides during the campaigns.
But at least, Hussein, we have had Trump say something to the effect that AGOA will go if he becomes president. And AGOA is one of
nobody should take advantage of the U.S. That's what you were saying.
And nobody's taking advantage of the U.S. U.S. trades across the world, and American wealth has been produced or created in various parts of the world. AGOA was an initiative started in order to increase or encourage actually an increased trade and these collaborations between Africa and the United States. Of course, our relationship between Africa and the United States dates back to the time of I could put it at the time of slavery, and you cannot talk about America without talking about African people who live in America who call themselves these days African Americans. And therefore, when Donald Trump says that he will not have anything to do with AGOA, I think it's a serious charge, and it should not be taken lightly, because if he scraps it, then Africa is likely to lose out.
Right. Polls show in the U.S. a 3% percentage difference, between 3 and 4 and 5%. From a Kenyan perspective, I mean, nobody would have expected Trump to come so close. Yet before even now, I mean, being pitted against Hillary Clinton, he trounced very key figures during the primaries, Republican primaries, Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio. Now he's very close. What does he say about the U.S.? Actually, and his supporters, and the U.S. generally?
Yeah, the U.S. politics is very interesting, because in the United States there are states that are Democrat, there are states that are Republican. Now, and there are those states that are in between that actually often counterbalances the two. Now, when you begin, Hillary Clinton started as a front runner. And what actually made her drop some points, most fundamentally, were this FBI investigation about the emails,
scandal,
which actually later on was recanted by, or was cleared by the FBI. And I think that contributed to the polls favoring Trump. But Trump has not trusted Clinton since the beginning. And I would still think that some of the Republican states have gone Democrat.
Would he have come, the point is, would he have come so close? And what does he say about the people of the U.S.? In Kenya, in Africa, in many parts of the world, they're really worried about the radical things that Trump has been saying, especially on immigration and security and everything. But then he has support in America.
I think it speaks to the political liberalism that is alive in America. But is it possible that we can look at it from the democratic factor in the Trump success? Is it possible that the Democrats would have engineered the initial success of Trump so that key individuals such as Ted Cruz could not face off with Clinton?
To be
so that a weaker candidate emerges in the end to face off with Clinton. But much more than that, I think this election also is so much about Obama than Clinton.
Why?
And that is why you've seen that Obama has come out strongly
18 times he's campaigned for
Clinton. And also it's because of the Obama ratings in the recent times, the successes of his regime, and also the way Obama has lent to the Clinton campaign his superior campaign skills and messaging of his team, which actually has been a very good springboard for Clinton in this campaign.
All right, I'll read these two texts as we move now to corruption in Kenya. Somebody here, Majok Makur, says, Trump will change the world if he wins because Donald Trump is the leader but not a politician. And many people have been talking about this all through. He says, I'm worried about Clinton winning because she will use Obama policies to disadvantage Africa, as Obama did to Libya. And then there's somebody here who says, a lot of people have said this as well, Trump is my guy, he is the bomb, he calls things as they are, no hypocrisy like Democrats. I don't know what you...
Yeah, I mean, what I know is someone says Trump is a leader, not a politician.
And he says things as they are.
You know, my belief is a leader is a person who speaks the right things. He has failed to talk about the right things in America. America is a society that is now more divided than it was maybe yesterday because of Trump's talk. He should be aware. If he was a good leader, I would think he should be aware that there are immigrants in the United States coming from the Mexico and South America, the Caribbean. Africa also has a huge migrant population. His insensitivity to these issues does not, to me, demonstrate that that's leadership. Leadership is about being sensitive to your society and being able to speak about issues that are important to your society. Internationally, there is a problem, I would think, that Trump presidency is likely to be more interventionist and Clinton presidency is likely to be more diplomatic in the sense that even the rest of the world is fearing about what is likely to happen when Trump takes over. Clinton kind of is predictable. People can predict the direction of events across the world.
I cannot negate the assertion that Trump will change the world. Other leaders in history changed the world as well. Stalin changed the world. Napoleon Bonaparte changed the world. The question is changing the world to what direction? And that's the question here. I think Trump, yes, if he were to trounce Clinton, will change the world, but not in the direction that is so progressive as to hold the U.S. in its superpower position and, in fact, drift it towards a more progressive superpower that can amalgamate the entire world.
But is there a challenge in terms of that style of politics? Is it challenging the ordinary, what we know, that he speaks as it is? Somehow it has endeared him to voters.
While he has, you see, when you look at the balance of power and states around the world, well, he's seen to be fairly close or having close ties with Russia. But the question is, will he be able to handle the global politics in such a manner that sobriety demands?
Right. We'll see who wins tomorrow. You keep talking to us on 22422 on Twitter using the hashtag The Big Question. Kogelo already says it's Hillary Clinton 89 to 11. 11 for Trump. Let's move to corruption in Kenya now. ODM saying they'll call for mass protests. I'll start with you on this one. Is that the way to go?
Well,
within the next 1 week, if their demands are not met on NYS and the immediate former Cabinet Secretary for Health, James Macharia, and the PS, Nicholas Mulaguri, do not step aside or are not sacked by the end of this week?
This corruption discourse is a very fundamental public finance management issue as espoused in law, and it's a very fundamental governance issue. It's not about the demands of ODM or any other party for that matter, or coalition for that matter. What is important, we must realize that we need to look at the pieces of legislation and the policies that we have in place, and how we as a people and our leaders can pay fidelity, or can pay fidelity to those laws and pieces of legislation and that policy far much more in a manner that takes this country forward. Because taking to the streets, while it's a constitutional right, does not in itself guarantee the progress that we need in curbing corruption in this country.
Okay.
I would think citizens of this country are now resorting to desperate measures to address the issues of corruption, because the institutions that are supposed to address corruptions have failed totally to deliver. See the investigations being carried out, the court cases, the court processes that have gone on in addressing this issue. We have seen really no fruitful end to any of these prosecutions. Another thing is that we see politics, also people drumming political rhetoric behind the process of trying to bring people to account. We have also seen the president throwing his arms up and saying, what do you expect me to do? What do you want me to do? I would think that when we have reached that point, Kenyans feel that this is something they can get through, of course, protests that are constitutional.
Right.
This is another constitutional means that perhaps could compel the government. But we don't have to go that direction. The president and the institutions in place should act now and not later, so that we can have meaningful
I'm going to come and ask you, how do you think they can act now with the desperation in the country? But what we've seen lately, the Ruto and Waiguru spat about the NYS scandal. What do you make of this? Ruto now telling Waiguru, you know, you should.
What I'm saying is scapegoating. If you played, Hussein, you played clips for
Deputy President
himself in the past, you see what Ruto, Deputy President, has been spoke then about the NYS issue. He said no money was lost, Waiguru is being lynched, Waiguru is innocent and all that. But now he's telling us that government has accepted that 890 money was stolen, and Waiguru should take responsibility. It's not telling the entire story. There are people who have been mentioned right close to the Deputy President, and instead of addressing the real issue, they are scapegoating. Waiguru was not alone in this matter. It seems that there are cartels that are robbing this country that are known, but the establishment is not taking action.
The fusion of politics and self-preservation is at play here. One, you see that with the place of the Deputy President and the position he holds, he is keen to defend the government.
Right.
And that's why when the former CS Waiguru was in government, he spoke in such a manner that was defending government. Now that Waiguru is out of government, the Deputy President is speaking in such a manner that defends the government. Now here, I think what we need is to be sure that Article 47 and Article 50 of the Constitution, which should be thoroughly explored, the question of fairness, fair administrative action that must be guaranteed to everyone, and the process that even the parliamentary committees undertaking, accounts committees undertaking, to make sure that it brings all these issues to light. It's important that every person who has been mentioned appears before the PSC. And it's not a question of exonerating. It's a question of explaining themselves in such a manner that due process should be followed. And in the end, the public money that's been lost should be recovered. It's not a question of saying that whoever explains best then is left off the hook. It is important that everybody is held accountable. And it's important too that the former CS, who of course initially held that docket, also is held to account as it is expected of Article 232 of the Constitution of the values of public service.
Right.
I would want just to add a little bit. One issue that we should be clear about, leadership also requires us to speak the truth. This is double speak. You say someone has not committed an offense, you say another day because he has touched your interest,
your office,
or she has touched your office, now you say the person is guilty. I think
and Waiguru is also being urged to say what she knows. So you think there's more she knows that she needs to say?
I would think that there is much more that she knows. she knows how much money went where. She might be having this information.
Right.
And you scapegoat that and make it a political, mix it with mud and all that, so that the truth will never be known.
Okay, divisions between Mailu and Clipper Mailu's cabinet secretary we saw today, and Nicholas Muraguri. Is it clear? I mean, it's clear now. I mean, they're not the best of friends. What does this speak to you about what's going on in the health ministry? You know, when Cleopa Mailu said, I was not aware that the principal secretary had requested for the transfer of the auditor, Bernard Mushere.
What I would think that points out to is the discordance that is there within the administration. You have two key administrators in the ministry who doesn't know. One doesn't know what the other one is doing. It tells you how discordant it is. And in that way, under such circumstances, to the best of my knowledge, that's how corruption takes place.
Okay.
The boss cannot be able to know what the other person
For me, I think it would have been anticipated that the CS and the principal secretary should work seamlessly in every kind of ministry. What is coming to the public right now, the gulf between them and the operations and their sentiments, also, it's what puts paid to how far removed public servants are to the realities and the intricacies of public service as it's expected in terms of delivery of services to the people. Now, here it's not a question of who is right and who is wrong. We must demand of them to explain to the people why is it that they are bringing all this theater to the public. And, of course, we must also hold all of them responsible and accountable. You know, when the CS says that he was not aware, and then you remember even the initial sentiments of the PS. Yeah. All these things speak to matters of leadership, issues of integrity, and I think moving forward, these are things that we thought the new pieces of legislation and the new constitution, which we embraced in 2010, would weed out. We must not allow public servants to behave like this.
As we understand from your position and background, both of you, you said what the president should do, what the institutions should do. Many people are talking about what should be done really to sort out the problem of corruption in Kenya. I'll start with you, and you can say it after him. What is this one thing that you think can be done to stop or change the way Kenya
Well, it was impressive in 2015 when the president addressed Parliament, joint session of Parliament, and even offered, provided names and lists of individuals who should step aside, and they did indeed step aside, the CSS, etc. And we have heard, even from the DPP's office, that there are 337 cases, high-profile cases, including various fellows even in the county government, cases that are going on. It is important that we need to see successful prosecution of even high-ranking officials and let them have their time, not just in court, but even behind bars. We need lessons learned.
Yeah, whenever money is lost in the ministry, I want to follow up what the president said. The president was saying that, do you want me to fire people, do this? I would think that the president has powers to do something to correct the situation. The power of the presidency is not a mean thing. So
constitutionally, he was saying
constitutionally, you can remove.
His hands were tied,
he can remove a PS. Constitutionally, he can remove a PS. You can fire a PS. You can interdict. A president can do something. Like the case of NYS, the PS Mangiti and Waigoro, they were saying you are the responsible because you are the one who signs these things. You are the chief officer here, and the same thing we are seeing playing also in the Ministry of Health. Muraguri with the PS does not seem to be working together with the CS, which again tells you they use their connection cartels and steal from the public coffers. Now the president can fire a PS, can fire anyone, can interdict anyone, can also investigate, can order investigation. In the case of constitutional officers, he has a way. The constitution has no tie us without giving us a way out. It provides a way out. Constitutional commissioners can be removed. There is a procedure, there is a process in the constitution.
All right.
He can do something to rescue this country.
Dr. Richard Bosire and Jabas Bigambo, thank you so much for making time for us on The Big Question. Keep talking to us on Twitter. The hashtag is The Big Question, and you can text us on 22422. We're back after this break.